The desert had a way of remembering everything. Every footprint left in the sand, every whisper carried by the wind, every tear hidden beneath a warrior's silence. The endless land kept its secrets. And among those secrets was the story of Tayan, an Apache warrior who had become a legend among those who feared him. People spoke his name in lowered voices. They said he could track a man across miles of empty desert without leaving a single sign behind. They said he could ride through a storm without fear and stand against enemies twice his number. They called him a warrior without a heart. But they were wrong. Tayan did have a heart. He had simply buried it long ago. Years before, he had been a different man. He had laughed around the fire, shared stories with his people, and dreamed of a future filled with family and peace. He believed that loyalty and kindness could protect a person from the cruelty of the world. But the world had taught him a painful lesson. Everything a person loved could be taken away. After losing the people closest to him, Tayan stopped allowing anyone near his heart. He became a man of the mountains and the desert, living between the wildlands where few dared to follow. He was respected, he was feared, but he was alone. Every morning he woke before the sun rose. He rode across the silent valleys, hunted only what he needed, and returned to his small camp where the only sound was the crackling of the fire. The silence never bothered him. At least, that was what he told himself. But deep inside, there was a part of him that still remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere. To hear someone call his name with kindness, to feel warmth beside the fire, to know that someone was waiting for him to return. Tayan believed those days were gone forever, until the night he found her. The storm arrived without warning. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the desert wind turned violent. Tayan was riding along an old trail when his horse suddenly stopped. The warrior looked ahead. Something was wrong. The desert was usually alive with movement, animals hiding from danger, birds escaping the wind, even the smallest sounds telling a story. But now there was only silence. Tayan slowly moved forward. Then he saw it. A broken wagon. Wood scattered across the ground. Supplies buried beneath the sand. And near the edge of the trail, a woman. She was lying unconscious beside a rock, her clothes covered with dust from the journey. Her hair moved gently in the wind, and one hand still held onto a small piece of fabric, as if she had been trying to protect something important. For a moment, Tayan simply watched. His first instinct was caution. The desert was full of danger. A wounded stranger could be a trap. A person could bring trouble to his doorstep. He had survived by trusting very few. But then he noticed something. She was alone, and she was hurt. The warrior who had spent years pretending he felt nothing, suddenly felt something he had not expected. Concern. He stepped down from his horse and walked toward her. "Can you hear me?" he asked quietly. No answer. Tayan looked around. There were no tracks except those leading away from the destroyed wagon. Whoever had caused this was gone. He knew he should leave. He knew helping her could bring danger. But his feet did not move away. Instead, he lifted her carefully and carried her back to his horse. For a man known for his strength, his touch was surprisingly gentle. He brought her to his camp and placed her near the fire. He cleaned her wounds, gave her water, and waited. Hours passed. The storm disappeared. The desert became quiet again. Then, as the first light of morning touched the land, the woman opened her eyes. Her expression changed instantly when she saw him. Fear. Tayan recognized it. He had seen that look many times before. People saw his clothing, his weapons, his appearance, and they imagined a monster before they ever knew the man. But this time, something about her reaction bothered him, because she looked afraid, yet she also looked curious. "Where am I?" she whispered. "My camp," Tayan answered. Her eyes moved around the small shelter. "You saved me?" He looked away. It was nothing. But Clara noticed something. A man who looked so dangerous spoke as if kindness was something he was embarrassed to admit. "My name is Clara," she said softly. Tyon did not respond immediately. Names created connections. Connections created pain. Finally he answered. Tyon. The simple exchange felt strange to him. He had forgotten what it felt like to introduce himself to someone without expecting betrayal. Over the next few days, Clara recovered in his camp. At first, they barely spoke. Tyon would leave early to hunt, returning with food and supplies. Clara would sit near the fire, watching him quietly. She noticed things others never noticed. The way he repaired broken things instead of throwing them away. The way he cared for his horse. The way he placed extra wood near the fire so she would stay warm. The way he always made sure she ate before he did. The stories about him had been wrong. He was not a heartless warrior. He was a lonely man who had forgotten how to show his heart. One evening, Clara sat beside the fire while the sunset painted the sky. A gentle wind blew through the camp, carrying dust across the ground. A strand of her hair fell across her face. Without thinking, Tyon reached out. His hand moved slowly. He brushed the strand away from her eyes, and then he stopped. The moment felt different, strange, powerful. His hand had touched her hair, but what he truly felt was something deeper. Warmth, peace, a feeling he had not known in years. He looked at her and realized something that frightened him more than any battle. He was no longer just protecting her. He cared for her. For the first time in a long time, his heart was awake. The warrior who had survived every fight in the desert suddenly found himself facing the hardest battle of all, allowing someone to love him. And as Clara smiled at him beside the fire, Tyon understood something he never expected. The thing he had been missing was never strength. It was love. And somehow, after years of walking alone, love had finally found him. The desert sunrise always came quietly. There was no announcement, no warning. One moment, the land was covered in darkness, and the next, golden light stretched across the mountains and painted the endless sand. For years, Tyon had watched countless sunrises alone. He had seen the world wake up, while his own heart remained asleep. But now, something was different. There was another presence beside his fire, another voice, another heartbeat. Clara. At first, Tyon told himself she was only a responsibility, a wounded traveler who needed time to heal before continuing her journey. That was all. At least, that was what he wanted to believe. But every morning, he found himself noticing small things. The way Clara smiled when she saw the sunrise. The way she thanked him for simple things, even a cup of water or a warm blanket. The way she spoke to him like he was a person, not a dangerous warrior from the stories people told. And that confused him. Tyon had spent years accepting fear from others. Fear was easier. Fear kept people away. Fear protected his heart. But Clara did something no one else had done. She made him feel seen. One morning she watched him repairing a damaged saddle near the fire. "You always fix everything," she said. Tyon continued working. "It needs to be fixed." Clara smiled slightly. "That's not what I meant." He looked at her. She continued. "You fix your weapons. You fix your supplies. You fix broken things around your camp." She paused. "But you never let anyone fix the broken parts of you." The words hit him harder than any weapon. Tyon looked away. Most people avoided speaking about his past. They saw the warrior and never searched for the man underneath. But Clara did, and that made him uncomfortable. "You don't know me," he said quietly. Clara looked at him. "Maybe not everything." Her voice softened. "But I know what I see." "And what do you see?" Tyon asked. She looked at the man sitting across from her. A man who pretends he doesn't care because caring once hurt him. For a moment, the desert was silent. Tyon had faced enemies without fear. He had stared into danger and never moved. But one woman's honesty made him feel exposed. Because she was right. He had built walls around his heart so high that even he had forgotten what was behind them. Days passed. Clara became stronger. She could walk farther. She could help around the camp. She even learned parts of Tayon's daily routine. But something unexpected happened. The camp that once felt empty began to feel alive. There was laughter. There were conversations. There were moments where Tayon almost forgot he was supposed to be alone. One evening, Clara found him sitting near the edge of a cliff, watching the sky. She sat beside him. "You come here often?" Tayon nodded. "When I need to think." "What do you think about?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he answered honestly. Clara lowered her eyes. She knew there was pain behind those words. "Do you miss them?" Tayon stared into the distance. "Every day." His voice was calm, but his eyes carried years of sadness. "I thought being alone would make the pain disappear." "And did it?" He shook his head. "No." The answer surprised even him, because it was the first time he admitted it out loud. Being alone had not healed him. It had only hidden his wounds. Clara gently placed a hand near his, not forcing him, not demanding anything, just reminding him that he was not alone anymore. Tayon looked at her hand. Such a small gesture, yet it meant more than words. He had known battles. He had known survival. But this kind of kindness was unfamiliar. That night, for the first time in years, Tayon slept peacefully. Not because the past was gone, but because someone was finally beside him. However, the closer Clara became, the more frightened he grew. Because love was dangerous. Love gave someone the power to hurt you, and Tayon had already lost too much. One morning, Clara found him preparing supplies. "You're leaving?" she asked. Tayon stopped. No, but she knew him well enough now. She knew when he was hiding something. "You're thinking about sending me away," his silence answered. Clara stepped closer. "Why?" Tayon looked at the ground. "Because your life is somewhere else. My life. You had a home before this. People who know you. A future that doesn't belong in the middle of nowhere with a man like me." Clara looked hurt. "Do you really believe you don't deserve anything better?" Tayon did not answer, because the truth was painful. He did not believe he deserved happiness. He believed happiness was something that belonged to other people. Clara moved closer. "Tayon, you saved my life." He looked at her. "You protected me," she continued. "But you don't understand something." "What?" "You saved me because you are kind." The warrior looked away. "You are not the man the world says you are." Her words stayed with him. For years others had defined him, a warrior, a fighter, a threat. But Clara saw something different. She saw a man who shared his last piece of food, a man who protected the weak, a man who carried pain, but still chose kindness. And slowly Tayon began to see it too. That night, as the fire burned between them, Clara laughed at a small story from her childhood. Tayon watched her, and without realizing it, he smiled. A real smile, the kind he had forgotten existed. Clara noticed. "You smiled." Tayon looked confused. "What, you actually smiled?" For a moment he almost denied it. Then he looked at the fire. "I forgot how." Clara's expression softened. "Then maybe it's time you remembered." The lonely Apache warrior who once believed his heart was gone forever was beginning to discover something new, weaker. He was becoming human again. But far beyond the desert hills, danger was moving closer. And soon Tayon would have to choose: protect his heart by letting Clara go, or risk everything to keep the first person who had ever truly seen him. For the first time in many years, Tayon's camp no longer felt like a place of survival. It felt like a home. The mornings were no longer filled with only silence. There were quiet conversations beside the fire, the sound of Clara preparing food, and moments where Tayon found himself watching her smile without even realizing it. It scared him, not because he disliked it, because he loved it. And love was something Tayan had spent years avoiding. He knew the desert. He knew the mountains. He knew how to survive against hunger, cold nights, and dangerous men. But he did not know how to survive happiness. Every time Clara laughed, a small voice inside him reminded him, "Don't get used to this," because everything beautiful in his life had once disappeared. But Clara saw the fear hidden behind his silence. One evening while they sat near the fire, she noticed him staring into the darkness. "You're somewhere far away," she said. Tayan looked at her. "I'm here." "No," Clara replied gently. "You're thinking about losing something." The warrior said nothing, because she was right. He was always waiting for the moment when the peace would end, when the past would return, when life would take away the one thing he had finally allowed himself to care about. Clara leaned closer. "You don't have to fight every battle before it happens." Tayan looked at her. "For people like me, battles always come." She studied his face. "Maybe," she smiled softly, "but maybe this time you don't have to face it alone." Those words stayed with him, but neither of them knew how soon they would be tested. 3 days later, Tayan noticed something strange. The desert was too quiet. The animals had moved away. The birds were gone. A warrior's instincts never disappeared. Tayan walked to the edge of the camp and looked across the valley. At first, he saw nothing. Then he noticed them. Tracks. Multiple horses. Men moving carefully, following. His expression changed. Clara noticed immediately. "What is it?" Tayan did not answer at first. He looked toward the trail, then back at her. "Pack your things." Her heart dropped. "Why?" "Because you need to leave." Clara shook her head. "Tayan, now." His voice was firm, but she saw the fear behind it. Not fear for himself, fear for her. She stepped closer. "Who is coming?" Tayan tightened his jaw. "Men who don't forget." Years earlier, before Clara arrived, Tayan had crossed paths with a group of ruthless outlaws who controlled parts of the desert trails. They were not soldiers. They had no honor. They took what they wanted and destroyed anything that stood in their way. Tayan had stopped them once, and men like that never forgave. Clara looked at him. "They are here because of you?" Tayan nodded. "Because I stopped them. And now?" "Now they will come looking for revenge." Clara watched him prepare his weapons. The old Tayan returned. The warrior. The man who trusted no one. The man who believed the only way to protect someone was to push them away. "Tayan," she said, "you need to go." "No." He froze. Slowly he turned. "What did you say?" "I said no." His eyes narrowed. "This is not a game." "I know." "Then understand." His voice became heavier. "I have spent my life surviving people like them. You have not." Clara stepped forward. "And you have spent your life surviving everything except happiness." The words silenced him. She continued. "You think sending me away means you're protecting me." Her voice softened. "But you're really just afraid." Tayan looked away. Afraid. That word was difficult for him. Warriors were not supposed to admit fear. But Clara knew the truth. He was not afraid of the enemy. He was afraid of losing her. Before he could answer, a gunshot echoed across the valley. The sound cut through the air. They had found them. Tayan immediately moved in front of Clara. "Stay behind me." But Clara grabbed his arm. "No." He looked at her. "I can't lose you." Her words were quiet, but they carried more power than any weapon. For a moment, the warrior who had faced countless dangers forgot how to respond. Then he nodded. Not because he agreed she should fight, because he finally understood. She was not someone he needed to protect from life. She was someone who had chosen to stand beside him. The attack came at sunset. The sky burned orange as riders appeared across the desert. Taeyeon moved with the precision of someone born for survival. Every step, every movement, every decision, calculated. But this time was different. Before, he fought because he had nothing to lose. Now, he fought because he had something worth protecting. Clara stayed close, helping where she could. She was not a warrior. She did not carry his experience. She carried something just as powerful: courage. The battle was long. The outlaws expected an isolated man. They did not expect a man who had found a reason to live. By nightfall, the danger was gone. The desert became quiet again. Taeyeon stood near the fire, breathing heavily. Clara approached him. "You're hurt." He looked at the small cut on his arm. "It's nothing." She smiled. "You always say that." For the first time, he laughed. A small laugh, but real. Clara touched his arm carefully. "You were different today." Taeyeon looked at her. "How?" "You weren't fighting like someone who wanted to die." The warrior became quiet, because she understood him. For years he had survived because he had no choice. Tonight, he fought because he wanted tomorrow. He looked at Clara, the woman who had walked into his lonely world and changed everything. "I was afraid," he admitted. She looked surprised. "Of them?" He shook his head. "No." His voice became softer. "Of losing you." The desert wind moved around them, and for the first time, Taeyeon did not hide his feelings. He let the truth exist. The lonely warrior had spent years protecting himself from love. But now he knew something. Love was not the thing that made him weak. It was the thing that gave him strength. And the greatest battle of his life had already been won. He had finally allowed his heart to belong to someone. The desert was quiet again. The kind of quiet that came after a storm. The danger had passed, the enemy was gone, and the fire between Taeyeon and Clara burned softly beneath the endless night sky. But even though the battle was over, another struggle had begun. A struggle inside Taeyeon's heart. For the first time in years, he had something he wanted to keep. Someone he wanted to wake up beside. Someone whose smile made the empty desert feel alive. But that was exactly what frightened him. Because love gave him something to lose, and Taeyeon knew loss better than anyone. The next morning, Clara noticed something different. Taeyeon was quieter than usual. Not the peaceful silence she had grown to love. This was the old silence, the one that built walls, the one that pushed people away. She watched him prepare his horse. "Where are you going?" Clara asked. Taeyeon kept tying the supplies. "To check the northern trail," he said. Clara looked at him carefully. "For how long?" He paused. "Long enough." Her heart sank. She knew what he was doing. He was creating distance. "Again, you're sending me away." Taeyeon stopped. "I'm protecting you." Clara walked closer. "No." Her voice was calm but firm. "You're deciding for me." Taeyeon looked at her. "You don't understand this life." "Then help me understand." The warrior looked away. The desert wind moved through the camp. Finally, he spoke. "You came from a world where people sleep safely behind walls. Where tomorrow is something you can plan." He looked around at the harsh land. "This place takes things from people." Clara stepped closer. "And it also gives things." Taeyeon's eyes met hers. "What?" She smiled sadly. "Hope." That word hit him harder than he expected. Because hope was something he had stopped allowing himself to have. He had survived by believing the past was gone, that love was gone, that happiness was something meant for other people. But Clara had changed that. She had walked into his life and shown him that a person could be hurt and still heal, broken and still become whole. Taeyeon lowered his voice. "You deserve more than this." Clara looked confused. "More than what?" "More than a man who carries ghosts." She studied him. "Do you think I only see the pain?" He said nothing. "I see everything." Her voice softened. "I see the man who saved a stranger even though he had every reason to walk away." She continued. I see the man who gives more than he takes. A pause. I see the man who pretends he has no heart because he's afraid people will break it. Taeon looked down, because those words reached the place he had hidden from everyone. The truth was simple. He was not trying to protect Clara from the desert. He was trying to protect himself from loving her too much. That evening, they sat beside the fire. For once, neither of them spoke. They just listened to the sounds of the night, the crackling flames, the distant call of animals, the wind moving across the land. Finally, Clara spoke. When I first woke up here, I was afraid of you. Taeon looked at her. She smiled slightly. I thought you were just another danger waiting for me. And now? She looked at him. Now I know you were the safest place I ever found. The warrior looked away. Those words were difficult to accept, because deep down, Taeon still believed he was dangerous. A man shaped by war. A man carrying too much darkness. But Clara saw something different. She saw the light he refused to see. Days passed. The decision remained between them. Clara's old life was waiting. A town, a familiar world, a path she had once imagined. And Taeon's life was here. The wilderness, the mountains, a life built around survival. 2 worlds, 2 choices, 1 heart. Then one morning, Clara found Taeon sitting near the river. She sat beside him. Do you remember the first day we met? Taeon nodded. You were injured, and you looked like you wanted to run away. A small smile appeared on his face. I did. Clara laughed. I know. They sat quietly. Then she asked, Why did you save me? Taeon looked surprised. Because you needed help. That's what anyone would say. She looked at him. But why did you stop? The question stayed in the air. Taeon thought about it. Years ago, he would have said, because it was the right thing to do. But now he understood. He stopped because something inside him still cared. Because even after all his pain, his heart had never truly died. Because I couldn't leave you there. Clara smiled. And that is exactly who you are. Taeon looked at her. What do you mean? You keep telling yourself you're only a warrior. She touched her chest. But you've always been more than that. For the first time, Taeon allowed himself to believe it. Maybe he was not cursed. Maybe he was not destined to be alone. Maybe his past did not have to decide his future. That night, under a sky full of stars, Taeon finally spoke the words he had been afraid to say. I don't know how to promise you an easy life. Clara listened. I don't know how to forget what I've lost. He took a breath. But I know that when you are here, his voice became quiet. I don't feel alone anymore. Clara's eyes filled with emotion, because those words meant more than any grand promise. They were from a man who had spent years hiding his heart, a man who was finally opening it. She reached for his hand. I'm not choosing this life because I need you to save me. She smiled. I'm choosing it because I want to stand beside you. And in that moment, Taeon understood. Love was never about rescuing someone. It was about choosing each other. The lonely Apache warrior who once walked through life alone had finally found something worth fighting for. Not a battle, not a victory, a home. But as the seasons changed, a new challenge waited. Because choosing love was only the beginning. Now they would have to prove that 2 people from different worlds could build one future together. The desert had changed. Or maybe it was Taeon who had changed. For years, the land had been nothing more than a place of survival. The endless mountains, the dry rivers, and the lonely trails were reminders of everything he had lost. The desert had heard his silence. It had carried his pain. It had watched him become a warrior who believed that loneliness was the only life he deserved. But now, when the morning sun rose over the valley, the same land looked different. There was warmth, there was peace, there was a home. And standing in the middle of it all was the same man who once believed he would always walk alone. Taeon, the warrior people once feared, had become a man people respected. Not because of his strength, not because of the battles he had won, but because of the kindness he carried. Years earlier, people only saw the outside. They saw his weapons, his scars, his serious expression. They believed he was a man without feelings. But Clara had seen what no one else could see. She saw the wounded heart behind the warrior. She saw the kindness hidden beneath the silence. She saw a man who had lost everything, but still chose to protect others. And because she believed in him, Taeon slowly learned to believe in himself. The small camp that once held only one person was now filled with life. The fire that once burned beside an empty shelter now warmed a family. The silence that once felt heavy was replaced by laughter. Taeon would sometimes stand outside his home and simply watch. He would watch Clara preparing food. He would hear voices around the fire. He would see the life he never thought he could have. And every time, he would remember the lonely man he used to be. The man who thought love was something meant for other people. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Clara found Taeon sitting near the river. She walked toward him and sat beside him. "You're thinking about the past again," she said. Taeon looked at her with a small smile. "How do you always know?" "Because I know you." Those simple words meant everything. Years ago, Taeon believed no one would ever truly understand him. He believed his pain was something he had to carry alone. But Clara had proven him wrong. She had not erased his past. She had helped him accept it. Taeon looked across the water. "I used to come here when I wanted to remember everything I lost." Clara listened quietly. "And now?" He looked back at their home. "Now I come here to remember everything I found." Clara smiled, because she knew exactly what he meant. He had found peace. He had found family. He had found love. But most importantly, he had found himself. The greatest change in Taeon was not that he became less of a warrior. He was still strong, still brave, still the man who would stand between danger and the people he loved. But now he fought for something different. Before, he fought because he had nothing left. Now he fought because he had something worth protecting. Love had not made him weak. It had given him a reason to live. The people around them began telling stories about Taeon. Some remembered his battles, some remembered his victories. But Clara always told the deeper story. She told them about the man who rescued a stranger, even though he expected nothing in return. She told them about the warrior who was afraid to open his heart. She told them about the man who discovered that kindness could survive even after years of pain. A man who was not saved by a weapon, not saved by a battle, not saved by power. He was saved by love. One night, as the stars covered the sky, Taeon and Clara sat beside the fire. The flames moved softly in the night wind. Taeon looked at Clara and remembered the first day he found her. The storm, the broken wagon, the fear in her eyes. The moment he reached out and moved her hair away from her face. A moment that seemed small, but it changed everything. Clara noticed him smiling. "What are you thinking about?" Taeon looked at her. "The first time I touched your hair." She laughed gently. "Of all the things you could remember, you remember that?" He nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Taeon looked into the fire. "Because before you," he paused, "I only knew how to touch things that helped me survive." His voice became softer. "Weapons, tools, the things a warrior needed. But when I touched your hair, I felt something I had forgotten existed." Clara looked at him. "What?" Taeon smiled. "Peace." The desert wind moved around them. The same wind that once carried his loneliness, now carried the sound of happiness. Taeon had spent his entire life searching for strength. He thought strength came from being fearless, from never needing anyone, from standing alone. But he was wrong. Real strength was allowing someone close. Real courage was opening a heart that had been broken. Real victory was finding a reason to keep living. Apache warrior who once walked through the world with an empty heart finally understood something important. A person does not find home in a place. A person finds home in someone who sees them completely. And after years of searching, Tyann had finally found his home. Not in the desert, not in a camp, not in a battle, but in the love of the woman who taught him that even the loneliest heart could learn to love again.